What if the greatest stories of courage and conflict weren't the ones everyone remembers, but the ones quietly left behind? The 1950s produced plenty of polished war blockbusters, yet hidden in the shadows were films that dared to show grit, fear, and humanity in ways others avoided. These aren't the titles plastered across history books. They're the forgotten ones. And some of them? They might just change the way you think about war movies forever. Fixed Bayonets, 1951. Imagine being the last line of defense stranded in frozen mountains, with nothing but your nerve to keep you alive. That's the brutal setup of Fixed Bayonets. Directed by Samuel Fuller, a man who had actually lived through the chaos of combat. This wasn't a glossy adventure. It was raw, tense, and dripping with the kind of authenticity only a veteran could bring. The story follows a small American platoon ordered to cover a retreat during the Korean conflict. One by one, their leaders fall, forcing a reluctant corporal to step up. He isn't eager. He isn't born for command. He's terrified. And that's what makes this film so gripping. You watch him wrestle with fear, second-guessing himself, while snow and silence press down like a crushing weight. When the shots finally ring out, they feel sharp, startling, and uncomfortably real. Fuller had shot the movie on a limited budget, but he turned restrictions into advantages. Snow-covered hills become eerie backdrops. Close-quarters tension keeps you glued to every whispered argument. It's less about glory and more about survival. A reminder that leadership isn't about medals. It's about shouldering responsibility when no one else can. At the time, audiences were distracted by bigger, flashier releases. But if you look closer, Fixed Bayonets feels years ahead of its time. It foreshadowed the kind of character-driven war dramas that would dominate decades later. Small in scope, but massive in emotional punch, this is one forgotten 50s gem that deserves your full attention. The Steel Helmet, 1951. If Fixed Bayonets was gritty, then The Steel Helmet was downright unfiltered. Once again, Samuel Fuller stepped up to the director's chair, and this time he shocked critics with a film that didn't just whisper about uncomfortable truths, it shouted them. Made in only 10 days with an almost shoestring budget, it still managed to rattle Hollywood and spark conversations that many studios weren't ready for. The story drops us into the Korean War with a battle-scarred sergeant played by Gene Evans, who survives a massacre only to stumble into more danger. Along the way, he teams up with a ragtag group that includes a medic, a young boy, and soldiers of different races. This mix allows Fuller to dig into topics most films of the era avoided: prejudice, trauma, and the uneasy morality of combat. What makes The Steel Helmet unforgettable is how it strips away the shine of war movies. The camera lingers on mud, sweat, and tired faces. Dialogue cuts deep, challenging not only the characters, but the audience watching. There's no sweeping soundtrack to glorify the struggle, just an almost documentary-like feel that drags you into the trenches. Controversy came fast. Some praised its honesty, while others bristled at its willingness to show cracks in the myth of the noble soldier. Yet that very honesty is what gives the film staying power. It was fearless, in ways most 50s productions weren't, proving that even on a tiny budget, a bold vision can change the conversation. Though overshadowed by larger titles, The Steel Helmet remains a cornerstone of gritty storytelling from the decade. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't sanitize, it just delivers the raw reality. If you've never seen it, prepare yourself. This one doesn't fade from memory easily. Men in War, 1957. Some war films try to dazzle you with explosions. Men in War does the opposite. It unnerves you with silence, paranoia, and the slow unraveling of the human mind. Directed by Anthony Mann, a master of tension, this movie drops a group of American soldiers into enemy territory during the Korean conflict. Their mission seems simple: reconnect with their division. But the path is anything but simple. Robert Ryan plays Lieutenant Benson, a steady leader, forced to guide his worn-out platoon across barren land. Enter Aldo Ray as Sergeant Montana, a hard-edged loner who trusts no one. The chemistry between these two men practically crackles as order clashes with rebellion. Every mile they cover feels heavier, every decision riskier. It's not about who wins the next battle, it's about who makes it out with their sanity intact. What makes this film stand out is its atmosphere. You rarely see the enemy. Instead, you feel them lurking in the fog, hidden in the hills. The soldiers' nerves fray with every step, and you feel it right along with them. By focusing on psychology, rather than spectacle, Men in War paints a picture of exhaustion that rings painfully true. Audiences in the late 50s weren't used to this kind of war movie. It wasn't patriotic. It wasn't polished. It was bleak. Maybe that's why it faded into the background. But time has been kind to Men in War. Today, it's seen as one of the most daring portrayals of psychological conflict in combat cinema. If you want a film that feels uncomfortably real, this is the one you've been missing. Battle Hymn, 1957. Most war films of the 50s were about bullets and bravery. Battle Hymn took a different path. It was about redemption. Starring Rock Hudson, the movie tells the real-life story of Colonel Dean Hess, a man torn between two identities, fighter pilot and compassionate caretaker. The film follows Hess during the Korean conflict, as he leads air missions while also struggling with his conscience. Haunted by earlier mistakes in combat, he channels his guilt into rescuing war orphans, helping thousands find safety. This wasn't a story about winning the next skirmish, it was about saving lives off the battlefield. Hudson delivers one of his strongest performances, balancing Hess's steel with his inner turmoil. Visually, Battle Hymn carries the grandeur of classic 50s cinema. Sweeping skies, roaring aircraft, and heartfelt moments on the ground collide in ways that feel larger than life. But beneath the spectacle lies a human drama about a man trying to reconcile his duty with his compassion. The film didn't soar at the box office. Audiences expecting pure action were surprised by its more emotional focus. Yet, that's exactly what makes it special today. It's proof that even in the height of the war movie boom, Hollywood could deliver something deeply personal. Forgotten by many, Battle Hymn deserves a fresh watch, not for its dogfights, but for its heart. 8 Iron Men, 1952. Forget massive battles. Sometimes the greatest tension comes from being stuck in one place. 8 Iron Men strips the war movie down to its bare essentials. Adapted from a Broadway play, it tells the story of a squad of American soldiers tasked with rescuing a comrade pinned down in a German machine gun nest during World War II. What unfolds is less about battlefield spectacle and more about the conversations, arguments, and doubts of men trapped by circumstance. Lee Marvin, long before his later stardom, shines as one of the squad members, bringing a mix of toughness and sly humor to the role. The soldiers debate whether risking their own lives for one man makes sense. The result is a tense chamber piece, where the real action is in the dialogue. The film thrives on atmosphere. Muddy foxholes, the constant threat of unseen enemies, and the claustrophobia of being pinned down make you feel the weight of every decision. The title may call them Iron Men, but what we see are fragile humans, conflicted, frustrated, and afraid. Critics at the time praised its character-driven focus, but without big battle scenes, it slipped under the radar. Over the decades, it has become a hidden gem for those who appreciate psychological tension over spectacle. 8 Iron Men proves that you don't need endless action to capture the brutality of war, you just need honesty. The Bridges at Toko-Ri, 1954. Sometimes a film leaves you with a single, haunting question. For The Bridges at Toko-Ri, it was, "Where do we get such men?" That line became one of the most chilling refrains in war cinema. Based on James Missioner's novel, this Korean conflict drama starred William Holden and Grace Kelly, bringing both grit and glamour to a story about sacrifice. Holden plays Lieutenant Harry Brubaker, a Navy pilot reluctantly called back into service. He's not portrayed as a larger-than-life hero, but as a man caught between love for his family and a duty he can't escape. Grace Kelly adds emotional weight as his wife, grounding the story in the everyday costs of conflict. The real spectacle, however, lies in the aerial sequences. The film's use of real Navy aircraft made the dogfight some of the most thrilling and authentic of the decade. Yet for all its technical beauty, this isn't a cheerleading war movie. It's somber, tragic, and deeply questioning. Holden's character openly doubts why he's fighting and whether the risks are worth it. The climactic mission pilot striking heavily defended bridges feels less like triumph and more like inevitability. Audiences admired the film at the time, but it didn't secure the long-lasting fame of other 50s war epics. Maybe it was too downbeat, too reflective for an era still craving victorious narratives. But today, its honesty and melancholy stand out. The Bridges at Toko-Ri isn't just about aircraft and missions. It's about the quiet bravery of men who know the odds are stacked against them and still go forward. Retreat Hell. 1952. The title alone sounds defiant, and that's exactly what Retreat Hell delivers. Based on the brutal winter retreat of the 1st Marine Division from the Chosin Reservoir in Korea, the film captures a story of survival under impossible conditions. Instead of polished adventure, the movie shows mud-freezing winds and relentless exhaustion. Frank Lovejoy stars as Lieutenant Colonel Steve Corbett, tasked with guiding his men out of a tightening trap. The soldiers aren't superhuman. They're cold, scared, and angry, but they keep pushing forward. This very human portrayal gave the movie its punch. Director Joseph H. Lewis leans into realism, using newsreel-style battle sequences and gritty dialogue to ground the story. The men joke, complain, and argue just like real soldiers. The camaraderie feels authentic, and when one of them falls, the loss hits harder, because they're not painted as symbols, they're painted as people. The film earned respect for its accuracy, but never became a classic. Perhaps audiences weren't ready for such a blunt, unvarnished take. Yet today, that's what makes it shine. It's a war movie without polish, one that reminds us courage isn't about glory. It's about putting one foot in front of the other, even when everything around you screams to stop. Porkchop Hill, 1959. If ever a war film embodied futility, it's Porkchop Hill. Released at the end of the decade, this Gregory Peck-led drama recreated the bloody struggle to hold a strategically minor hill during the Korean peace talks. Imagine fighting desperately for ground that, even if taken, might not matter at all. That's the bitter heart of this film. Peck plays Lieutenant Joe Clemens, who leads his men into a fight they know is nearly hopeless. The film spares no detail in showing the fatigue, confusion, and grim determination of soldiers asked to risk everything for a cause they barely understand. Battle scenes are intense, but never glamorous. Soldiers collapse from exhaustion, communication breaks down, and the hill itself becomes a symbol of senseless sacrifice. Director Louis Milestone, famous for All Quiet on the Western Front, brought the same unflinching eye to this film. He wasn't interested in glorifying combat. He wanted to show its absurdity. Peck gives one of his most restrained performances, embodying a leader who holds himself together, even as the situation crumbles. Audiences at the time were split. Some admired its realism, others found it too bleak. But in hindsight, its refusal to sugarcoat makes it one of the most daring war movies of the 50s. Porkchop Hill is less about victory and more about endurance in the face of pointlessness, making it unforgettable once rediscovered. Hell's Horizon, 1955. Not every war film needs a massive ground battle to leave you shaken. Hell's Horizon takes the war into the sky and then traps you in a tight, pressurized cabin with a crew of men carrying out a near-suicidal mission. Directed by Tom Grease, this B-movie gem centers on a B-29 bomber squad assigned to strike a heavily defended target during the Korean conflict. John Ireland plays the pilot, a man carrying not only the weight of the mission, but the lives of every crew member crammed inside the metal beast. The tension is relentless, claustrophobic corridors, Flickering dials and the constant hum of engines create a setting that feels more like a pressure cooker than a war zone. Every mechanical rattle raises suspicion. Every sidelong glance between crewmates signals a fracture in morale. What sets Hell's Horizon apart isn't polished spectacle, but raw intensity. The men bicker joke and confess their fears while waiting for the moment of truth. Their cramped world is so vividly painted that you can almost smell the recycled air and hear the heartbeat-like rhythm of the propellers. Unlike bigger war films of the decade, this one avoids patriotic polish. Instead, it focuses on fragile humanity under unbearable stress. When it was released, Hell's Horizon didn't make a big splash. Overshadowed by larger productions, it quietly disappeared from theaters. But seen today, it's a fascinating time capsule low-budget war film that manages to feel deeply authentic. If you've ever wondered what it was like to live inside the belly of a bomber for endless hours of dread, this forgotten picture delivers that experience better than most. The Young Lions, 1958. By the late 50s, audiences expected their war movies to come with tidy heroes and villains. The Young Lions threw that out the window. Based on Irwin Shaw's novel, this sprawling drama follows three men on opposite sides of World War II, played by Marlon Brando, Montgomery Clift, and Dean Martin. The result is an ambitious character-driven film that feels almost too modern for its era. Brando portrays a German officer, but instead of the usual one-dimensional portrayal, his character is conflicted questioning and quietly disturbed by the world unraveling around him. Montgomery Clift plays a sensitive American, drafty, constantly underestimated and pushed to his limits. And Dean Martin, breaking away from his usual lighthearted persona, steps into the role of a reluctant soldier who finds his courage in unexpected ways. The film spans continents and emotional tones, intimate love scenes, tense battlefield moments, and long stretches of reflection. At nearly 3 hours, it risked losing audiences, but it also gave each character the space to breathe. Critics admired the ambition, but noted its uneven pacing. Audiences were intrigued, yet it never became the blockbuster its cast promised. What makes The Young Lions unforgettable today is its refusal to simplify. Instead of clean-cut patriotism, it offers shades of gray. Brando's performance in particular shocked audiences, making viewers uneasy with the idea of finding humanity in the enemy. This moral complexity was rare in the 50s and feels groundbreaking in hindsight. If you want a war film that challenges your expectations rather than comforts them, The Young Lions is the one to rediscover. So there, you have it in war movies from the 1950s that history tried to bury, but are absolutely worth digging up. These films aren't about polished victories. They're about fear, doubt, grit, and the uneasy truths hiding beneath the surface. Which one surprised you the most? Drop your pick in the comments. Share this with a fellow film buff, and don't forget to subscribe for more rediscoveries. After all, the best stories are often the ones almost forgotten.